When you start architecture school, you may be required to take a class called communications or visual representation or something similar to that. So this is going to be new to most people, whether you've done any kind of drawing, graphics or design before. So it's important to know the point of a communications class. And if you don't have a specific communications class listed on your schedule, you still want to know, because this content is going to be built in somewhere else in your degree, or you might have to figure some of it out yourself. I'm Liz Watt. I create content and resources for students and new practitioners of architecture to help you learn faster and easier. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you subscribe. Today I want to talk about architectural communications classes, in particular the purpose of architectural communication classes, the types of architectural communication, teaching style and content, communication class and subject format, and finally workload and independent study. Let's get started with the purpose of architectural communication. So communication is the exchange of thoughts, ideas, messages or information. Architectural communication is the exchange of thoughts, ideas, messages or information about architecture, architectural design, or the process of architectural design. Now, communication is a two-dimensional or three-dimensional representation in graphic or visual form of an idea, design, or finished project. It's not the project itself. So it's important to remember that communication tools are merely one way of representation. The communication is in itself an abstraction of an idea, design, or project. It is one way of representing a part or perspective. Communication is not the idea or the design or the finished project. It is one way of representing that thing, that end product. Now, communication classes exist to teach you, number one, conventions of architectural drawing, two, different tools, skills and software used to communicate architectural design, ideas and architecture, and three, different methods and processes for creating visual and graphic communication of architectural ideas. There are many different ways to communicate your ideas about your architectural design and also the design process. These types of communication are used in different ways throughout the overall design and documentation process, as well as after a project has been built and constructed to capture the finished form. Types of architectural communication skills and tools you may learn about include collage, which is often used in the early stages of design to explore ideas and concepts about the project and the design and the physical qualities and characteristics of what you're trying to create. Drawing is the primary method of representation in architecture, and there are many different types of drawings, including sketches, so rough or unfinished drawings used in the process of developing designs and exploring ideas of space, perspective, plan, section, etc. Then there's diagrams, which are representation of parts of a whole or an idea in a simple graphic form. There's two-dimensional drawings. So these represent a three-dimensional form in 2D with what we call orthographic drawing systems. These include plans, sections and elevations, which I'll talk about in some other videos. Then there's three-dimensional drawings, which represent a three-dimensional form with what we call oblique projections or perspective drawing systems. And again, there's so much to explore about them. We'll look at them very separately. Then there's analog drawing, which is drawing by hand with pen and pencil and paper. So even with all the digital software available, this is a super important skill to be able to draw quickly, especially in the early conceptual stages of design. And especially if you're with a client or a builder and you want to explain something, you need to get it down very quickly rather than say, I have to go back to the office and get on my computer. There's physical model making, which is a three-dimensional representation of an object or thing or a proposed structure. So these are models that we make often by hand, and they're used throughout the design process to test ideas and forms as well as represent the final design. Physical models can be made with many different materials. Photography is used to capture three-dimensional objects, structures and spaces, such as models used in the design process, the project site, the design process, and the finished architectural buildings and interior spaces, as well as the construction process. Then we have 2D digital software, so computer-aided drawing or CAD programs such as AutoCAD can be used to develop 2D orthographic and other drawings once the initial design has been developed. It's just like drawing with a pen and paper, but on a screen. We have 3D digital software, so programs such as SketchUp, Revit, or Rhino are used to test and document the three-dimensional form of a design project on a computer. Then we have rendering software. So you may use software such as Grasshopper to develop final presentation drawings. This is much more advanced software and it's not really introduced in the first year or even the first few years. Then we have graphic design software. Programs such as Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign are used to help you develop images, collages, presentations, and also graphic folios, books, or reports. So that's a lot of different communication tools. Now, it's important to know that communications and software are not the be-all and end-all, especially if you cannot design or you do not know how a building goes together. They're just one tool in architecture, and there's many tools within it. You can have a great drawing or photograph of a terrible design, or a terrible drawing or photograph of an amazing design. So it's important to understand communication as just one part of your architectural toolkit. So if you have any specific questions about any types of those communications, please let me know in the comments. Communications classes can be run in different ways. Similar to a design studio class, there will often be a theory and a practical component and also a focus on skill development, especially in your first year. You may participate in a series of lectures that cover different types of communication types that we've talked about. It might look at examples, analyses, and possibly processes and tips and tricks for creating different methods and representation. You'll be asked to develop and test both analog and digital skills, which you'll continue to evolve and master over your architectural studies and career. So analog includes hand drawing, sketching, physical model making, collage, and photography. These skills involve testing different materials, pens, papers, and processes to represent your ideas. Digital skills may include learning a range of software that can be used to draw, create models, or develop graphic presentations. You may be asked to complete short exercises or video or other tutorials to help you learn the basics of these skills. Many of them might be practical. You'll also be asked to apply software and skills in practical projects. So these may be a series of small independent projects, or they may connect into your design studio projects where you take the skills you're learning in communications and apply them to design. They are likely to be individual projects. So communication classes can vary in format and can be similar to design studios in some ways. There's likely to be a lecture or content component for the whole year group, and this could be delivered live or online. If it's online, it's always important to complete all your preparation work before the tutorial class so you get maximum benefit and value. That means being organized. Tutorial classes are usually in smaller groups. So the format will depend on the current content, the skills, and the projects that you're learning. The tutor may vary the format of a class depending on where the group is at in their work or particular questions or issues or level of understanding. So if the work you do in your class is different from a friend, that's okay. Every tutor is different and every group of students is different, and that's what makes architecture school and design so interesting. A communications class may have a range of activities, including content review. So review and discussion of content from weekly lectures and readings. So if this is the case, you want to come prepared with any questions. Then there could be new content introduced in addition to the lecture. So the tutorial may include some content specific to a communications skill, software, project, or activity that is separate to the lecture. There may be detailed discussion of the assessment and project, expectations and requirements with an opportunity to ask questions. There could be informal presentation of student work for feedback and discussion, and this may occur as individual presentations to the class in smaller groups or one-on-one to your tutor. The teacher may ask some or all students to present their work and ideas, or may just give general comments and feedback to the whole class. There could be formal presentation at the end of a project or the end of the semester. This is more likely in a design studio, as communications is more often a folio-based assessment on how well your work and ideas communicate graphically without you having to explain it. There could also be specific in-class activities such as model making or collage, drawing or design that will move you towards developing your ideas for major projects. These may or may not be presented in the class or continued at home. Skills development will likely consist of tutorials or small activities or exercises that once completed are kind of done. However, like design studios, communications projects are often an iterative process. Now, this means that on your project work, you'll be unlikely to complete it once and it's finished. There will always be feedback and room for development and revisions. This does not mean your work is bad. It just means that you are learning and there is room for improvement. And you're going to find this throughout your entire career. For most of your degree and even throughout your professional life, there will always be room for some improvement for everyone, no matter how long you've been doing it. That is just the nature of creative processes and design. Now, communications class may seem a little bit like a mini design studio, as it may have a series of small projects that involve a certain level of design. However, it is important to note that the focus is on the development of your skills and ability to communicate ideas using architectural conventions and methods, and not so much the concept or design itself. So the workload of a communications class could be similar to that of a design studio, as it is quite practical. You can choose to explore and experiment with the skills, tools, and methods as much or as little as you like. However, the more you play around, the broader your options for presenting your ideas. If you have a communications class, you will likely be introduced to specific skills and software that your particular institution prefers, or maybe can provide access to. Dedicated communications classes will likely cover all the basic skills and tools you'll need to get started in your early years of architecture. However, you're always going to be learning more. If you do not have a dedicated communications class, then some of these skills, tools, and representation methods will probably be introduced in other classes. So you may learn drawing, types, collage, model making in some of your design studios. Digital software may be introduced in design studios or construction classes. Either way, you will likely only be introduced to these skills and tools at a basic level. It will be expected that you continue to develop and test these skills in your design studios and other subjects as you move throughout your degree and your career. You may be expected to learn some software independently and completely outside the class. There are some great software tutorials available. So your tutor or lecturer may suggest some, or start with the software developer for some of the best ones. Do your best to develop some kind of study group or a group of friends who can talk to and help each other figure out any of these new skills or ideas. Communications is essential in every part of the architectural design and documentation process. Like most of your early subjects, it is not something that is learned, tested, and then forgotten. It is developing foundation skills, knowledge, and understanding that you will use and continue to build upon for the remainder of your career. Understanding communications includes learning skills and software and also knowing how to communicate your ideas well, visually and graphically. It's important to look at other student work and professional work with a critical eye. Collect examples of great methods of communication where you can immediately understand what the author is trying to represent. And then consider the techniques, the tools, the layout, and general methods of presentation. Analyze examples and experiment with different ideas in your work as you develop a unique representation style of your own. Do not be scared to experiment with technique and test different ways of communicating your ideas. Every idea is unique, so why not develop a unique style of representation that reflects you? So if you have any specific questions or comments about communication subjects or communications in general, I would love to know. If you want to know more, then make sure you hit the notification button and consider subscribing to my channel, because I have a ton of content to share to help you learn faster and make studying and practicing architecture so much easier. While you wait for the next episode, make sure you check out some of my other work either here or at archimash.com. That's everything for today. I hope you found it helpful. Have a great day, and I will see you next time.